Yes, hi, am I audible? Can you hear me? Audio okay? Frame is good, okay. Audio. All right, then let's begin. So today, guys, so exam season. All right. All right, so exam season is here, and well, RCs form a core part of the English section, right? Both for the boards and the IPMAT as well. So we'll be taking a look at how to deal with RCs in terms of strategies, what kind of strategies you can implement, what kind of tweaks maybe you can make in your preparation in this moment, and how to maybe approach them. We'll take a look at those strategies that can fine tune your performance. All right, we'll take a look at what the differences are between the two, how maybe boards are different, how you approach RC in boards versus how you approach one in IPMAT. All right, we'll take a look. Let's go. Right. Just beginning with the basics. What really is the problem with RC, right? Like it's straightforward. I mean, you have a piece of text, you're supposed to understand it, you're supposed to answer. Sounds very simple. It's just one of those things which, becomes very complicated because it is very simple. Therefore, it can be molded in so many different ways that it can be complicated when eventually presented. Why do students lose marks in this section? A lot of people think it's because of their poor English skills. They feel that it's a test of language. Whereas it may not really be a test of language. Right? We'll see what really it is a test of as we go forward. A lot of it has to do with how effectively you read. And we'll see what effective reading is as well. A lack of structured approach to passages. A lot of students have this habit of not writing down anything. They just look at the passages, they just keep reading, and it's all memory, and they rely too much on that. And eventually, after a while, they just keep forgetting what was in paragraph one, what was it really talking about. You start losing grip on the RC. That's where a lot of problem occurs. And eventually, because questions have to be answered, option elimination is the core strategy that is applied in an RC. And often, a lot of students have very poor strategies to eliminate options. That is also something that we will cover as part of this session. How you can improve all of these things. Right? Let's take a look. What's the difference when we say a boards RC and an IPMAT RC? What really is the difference? A lot of boards RC is about retrieval of information. So the passage is given to you in a boards RC. Sorry, let me just use that. In a boards RC, passage is like data. It's presented in the form of what we say data, a lot of information or data or information. Whereas in IPMAT, competitive exams in general, it's more about the arguments. It's less about the data and more about the arguments that are presented. And while these arguments are presented, they are also present with some amount of information. Without that, pure arguments are not really presented, right? So you have some amount of information. Along with that, you also have a lot of data as well. That's what makes makes the IPMAT one a bit complicated. What is the test in the boards? What speed you can read and how much information you can retain, and therefore when the questions are asked, how much information you can retrieve from the given set of passages. That is the test when it comes to the boards. What about IPMAT? IPMAT interpretation and inference, because the passage is really about arguments. The question is, how do you interpret arguments? How do you understand these arguments, and what kind of inferences we can draw, reading between the lines, understanding things that have not really been said but have kind of been said, right? Those kind of things is what this tests. Boards are all about rewarding accuracy. So how much, so X amount of data is given, out of which can I retrieve almost X amount of data? Test. I'm tested on Y amount of data from that. How much of it can I answer? So speed, accuracy, that's what the test is in the boards. Whereas in IPMAT, it is your logical understanding which is being tested. It's really a question of logic, not really language. Often people confuse it with a test of language. It is really all about the logic, and the language part often can be eliminated in so many smart ways. Logical reading. Do I understand the flow of argument and how the point is being made? Under, obviously, time pressure. Well, the boards also has that, but really the IPMAT and competitive exams are extremely time based. All right. So that those are the key differences. What is the pattern? Like I said, so data, right? So data means therefore factual questions based on fact. What is this? Can you answer what what part of the RC probably has this question, and you just go back, check the detail, answer the question. That's what happens in an boards RC. A lot of questions are based on vocabulary also. Sorry, a lot of questions are also based on vocabulary. So a bit of language test also here. Short answer format, answers not really long, much shorter. Limited deep inferences, not really deep inferences are made, very basic level. In terms of the argument level of it, it is very surface level. What about the IPMAT? Most of it is based on inference, drawing conclusions, inferences, identifying assumptions within the given piece of text. That is the core part of the RC here. Tone-based questions is another sort of inference. You need to understand what the tone is. Is it sarcastic? Is it humorous? But within humorous, is it really sarcastic? Right? Anger, insidious, and all of these different kinds of tones that are present within regular speaking, right? So you have to identify within this piece of text what are the elements which will guide me in understanding the tone. Is he being angry? Is he being humorous? Is he being sarcastic? Is he being critical about something, right? Is the author being critical? What are the intentions and assumptions? Why is this piece of text here? What is it being, what is it that they're talking about? What is the point that they're trying to make? These are all the things that you need to focus on. One of the other things, when it gets to the options itself, right? Very close options. They try to keep a couple of close options to understand how much detail you can get into. Details is, do you have an eye for detail? Eliminating options based on finer details. That's what they're looking for. And eventually also the fact that it has to, all of this has to be done within a very strict time frame. Okay, so that's the difference, basic difference that we're looking at. How to read is what we'll get at first. The first paragraph, in fact the first line of the first paragraph is often the most important line. It can set, it often sets up the whole of the paragraph. It is very important that you understand that line as best as you can. All right. And by extension, as the step 1 here says, try to understand the first paragraph completely. Like I said, as much as you can. Often the job, rest of it becomes so much easier. The basic questions like what is the summary and all those could eventually be in the first paragraph itself. Right? A lot of things come from the first paragraph, and it's a good way of setting up. If you don't really understand the first paragraph to its almost to its full extent, it's really difficult grasping the rest of it. All right, so read the first paragraph, give it some time, take some time to read the first paragraph. Step 2, identify the author's purpose. What is he writing this for? When we read a sentence, what is it that these sentences are being written for? What is the agenda? What is the argument flow? Where is this going? Identifying that is important. Paragraph mapping, knowing what paragraph is saying what. What is the purpose of paragraph? Can you summarize? Summarizing. Summarizing paragraphs, creating a blueprint or exoskeleton of the whole thing. Para 1 is saying this, P1 is talking about X, P2 is talking about Y, P3 is talking about Z. So if there's a question anywhere that is perhaps talking about X, Y, or Z, I can just always go back, check the argument here, check the argument here, check the argument here, and I can answer the question much more accurately. All right. So I don't have to completely rely on my retention skills. All right. I can therefore award more of my brain power to the logical part of it. All right. Not really tracking how much data that I've accumulated. Step 4, track structure words. We look at this, what structure words are and how they impact. Understand the flow, do not memorize. Like I said, how this is flowing, X to Y, Y to Z, how these things are flowing, how different parts of the argument. The argument also has different elements to it. They're not really unidimensional. It's not really a sentence. So what are the different elements to it? What is the context part doing? Where is the context part and how is it flowing to the main point? From the main point, how is it going to the example and all of those things? The flow, understanding that flow, like I said, getting this exoskeleton, getting to that flow is really critical and could be really useful. First paragraph is everything, right? It tells us what the passage is really talking about. The theme of the passage. It will tell you the theme of the passage. The direction of the argument is also something that it is going to tell you in a lot of cases, sets the tone. Never rush. Therefore, never rush the introduction. This is the most key aspect. Do not rush the introduction. Even if you don't have a whole lot of time, do spare extra seconds for that. You can maybe take it easy in the subsequent paragraphs, but the first one has to be given time. Understanding the theme, the direction, the tone will completely change how fast you can read the rest of it. If you don't, you will struggle. You will have to keep going back, right? So first paragraph, very, very important. Step 2, identifying the author's purpose. What really is the purpose? Is he explaining a topic? Is he being critical about something? What really is he talking about? Defending a position. Is there a certain position that he's holding and he's defending it? Is there a comparison being made between two ideas? Is there a solution being proposed to a particular problem? We can identify from the first paragraph itself, often we can understand whether a certain idea is being explained, whether a certain thing is being criticized, whether a certain position is being defended, or things are being compared, or solutions are being proposed for a problem. And it's really important that we can, if say you're reading a paragraph, by the end of it, you should be able to suggest. If I ask you what is the author's purpose, you should be able to tell me, bucket it into one of these things. Paragraph mapping. Mentally summarize each paragraph in one line. It's what I call as, can you text it to me? So if you read a paragraph and then if I say, can you text it to me in one line? That's what it should be like. A single text, right? Not a paragraph itself. Just identify what the main point is and relay that information, right? So something like P1 is introducing the issue, P2 is background or example context, P3 is an argument or counter argument to what is being said. This will help you with avoiding rereading, which is Basically, a cardinal sin when it comes to RCs, rereading is the biggest sin you can commit. To avoid this, this is a good thing. Rereading also is, if you say have to do it to be sure and things like that, it's best to know which part to reread. You need to see often, in the sense that you will be required, when you do the questions, you will be required to go back and check. But it has to be a check. It can't be a, I will understand this argument right from the start. That is going to take a lot of effort and a lot of time. And often you may not even completely understand it because you're reading maybe only a part of the RC, not the whole thing. And maybe you're missing something within that, right? So could lead to errors. Rereading, therefore, of the entire argument is not suggested. Map it, then know where to go, and then you can always check out if you're getting it right. That's the idea. Learning to do this is very important. Every time you're doing an RC, just write down what is the summary of the paragraph that you're reading, and then perhaps an overall summary of what the flow is like. And you'll be able to see it. What you call like a RC exoskeleton or a RC blueprint. Yeah, I'm able to see the whole thing. Structure words. However, something like, say I said, however. If I say however, basically, when would I use it? I've said something and then I'm about to say something else. However is the case when I want to create a contrast. Therefore is when I've said something and then I'm going to say what I'm going to say is the conclusion, although is a concession. For example, is going to be an illustration. This is a good one, actually. I do recommend this time. For example, can be treated in two ways. If I understand the argument, maybe the example may not be necessary. And the other brilliant thing about it, if I don't understand the argument, the example will help me identify the argument, right? So these things are very, very crucial. Identifying these things should be you should be on the lookout for these kind of words. So these signals sort of like these words are like signals in the argument, right? What is going to happen next is what they're saying, right? So very important to track these structure words. And finally, understand the flow, not the facts. Your job is to understand the flow of the argument. It's not really factual. If you're doing for a boards RC, yes, you can go with the facts, focus on the facts, focus on retention, all that, and all that. IPMAT and other exams, it's not really about the facts, it's really about the way the argument flows. So do not memorize details. Details, memorization is not to be done. Your job is not to memorize details. If a certain detail is required, you can always, since you've been marking the passages, you create this exoskeleton, you know where to go and look. So you don't have to memorize it. Understand what the central point is, understand what is the supporting logic for that, and follow this kind of argument progression. This is what the point, this is where the point was made. For that, this is supporting logic that was given. For the argument, this is the example that was used to build the argument. This is something that was used for context. There are different parts to this, to an RC. Identifying these different parts helps you a lot in identifying, understanding it in the on the finer details. All right, so now we've understood the RC, but eventually we have to answer the question. So what kind of questions are you likely to see? So direct and factual is something that you see often in board, but yeah, sometimes you can get them in IPM as well. We do see a lot of direct and factual questions too. Inference is, however, where the best and the rest are separated, right? So inferences are the key ones that you should be able to, that you should focus on. Tones is something also, in my book, it comes as a form of inference plus vocabulary. Infer, because you need to understand from certain words that this is the tone, and also in terms of options, you need to know which option means what. All right, therefore, it is a combination test. Vocabulary also, some level of vocabulary also is required. Main idea, what is the summary, what does the author mean by this passage, things like that. That's the main idea. And vocabulary, often in context, is also something that is asked within the context of this paragraph. What could something like this mean? All right, what could this mean? What could this idiom mean? And things like that. Those are the type of questions that we usually see. Let's take a look at how to strategically approach these different types of questions. When it comes to strategy, for direct questions, identify the keywords. You need to check out the keywords from the question. Scan the passage for matching idea. Through the exoskeleton, now I know where to go and look. So I'm just going to scan for where the matching similar ideas. Then I'm going to check what I need to check. Check context before selecting answer. You also need to understand in what context these things are being spoken. Often you can get those wrong. And avoid partial matches. Direct questions are direct, so they have to be accurate. You can't have partial answers for that. Inference questions. Look for implications, implies, suggestions, likely, agrees. These are inference questions. What does the author imply? What is the author suggesting? The author is likely to agree with the following statements. All these are inference questions. Inference must be 100% supported. There should be a statement or statements within the RC that support your inference. If they don't, you are probably marking the wrong answer. Avoid imagination beyond text. Very, very important. Do not add information from outside that you may have of the topic. Stick to what is given. Right? Stick to the text. Tattoo it on your wrist if you need to. Avoid imagination beyond text. Do not go beyond what is given. Stay within the logic of the passage. These are the ways you approach these questions. Do not stray. Tone questions. How do I check tone? Common tones are, you can, is he being analytical? You can be critical, skeptical, objective, right? So you need to understand the meanings of these words, and you also need to check in which are the words that suggest analytical, which are the words within an RC that I can see to see, okay, he's being critical, skeptical, objective, all of these things. Eliminate emotional extremes. In most scenarios, okay, Shaurya, I would not recommend remembering names at all. If you feel that in the sense that what you can do is with having you can mark them in terms of, like, the way that I do it is I use acronyms. If I need something, I'll just put VP or AS or something like that, or AP, anthropic principle, or AP, things like that. That's what I do. All right. So you can use that technique, and that will and just write it in as part of your exoskeleton or your blueprint, right? And when there is a question based on that, you can go back. So detail-based questions that is how I would approach it. I would look and they say, okay, this detail is here. You should know where the detail is, not necessarily the whole thing. All right. I should know, okay, this was being spoken in passage 2. All right. But I don't have to know the entire name or like the whole thing, memorize it. Not necessarily required. All right. I hope that answers your query. All right. Check if the author is balanced or biased. That is also something that you need to check. So a lot of these questions will be based on this: what balanced approach, or does he favor a certain point or certain perspective. Tone also applies to the entire passage. Sometimes you can also get what is the tone of the author in saying this very specific thing, but that very rarely happens. Mostly it applies to the whole passage in general. Main idea questions. Avoid options that are too narrow. Main idea questions are broadly. Broadly, what is the RC talking about? That is the goal. That is what we need to answer. Avoid options that are too narrow. Anything that is too doesn't really cover the whole thing, you need to get rid of. Too broad speaks maybe perhaps if we are say speaking about colonizing Mars, and the option one of the options is talking about colonizing space, doesn't really work. That is too broad. We're specifically talking about colonizing Mars. Colonizing space is not part of the RC's range. Therefore, that is too broad. Avoid example based options is one of the things. General main idea questions are not really specific to the idea, like the names itself suggests, right? So, examples are something that need to be avoided. Correct answer covers entire passage, right? This is basically the paramount situation in the sense that you need to know the right option has to cover the whole thing. Option elimination is one of the core ideas of main answering the main idea question. Option elimination is one, perhaps the most prominent place where option elimination shows itself is the main idea. All right. Covers the entire passage. Okay. Next, golden elimination rule. Extreme words, look out. I won't say you have to straight up eliminate them. You need to be a little careful. Don't fall for it. But the moment you see always, never, completely anything very extreme, you need to be very careful in choosing that option. You need to have a very good reason if you're choosing the other. In most cases, it's going to be wrong. Eliminate out of scope options. Anything that is not part of the scope of the paragraph needs to be eliminated. Distorted arguments are often given something that is not really mentioned, and the argument reaches beyond that. That is also, or some makes a clear factual error in changing the narrative of the argument. Eliminate factually correct but irrelevant options. A lot of people actually get this. These are the most common mistake that you make is this. You look at something which is factually correct according to the paragraph and you immediately feel that is the answer. It is the easiest way to trap students. It may be irrelevant to the question being asked. All right. So you need to be very careful, particularly careful when you see a factually correct option. You need to be very, very careful. Okay. Next, thinking model. If passage shows benefits plus drawbacks, it's a balanced tone. Watch for contrasting words like but. Do not choose extreme answers. Think logically, not emotionally. Don't get emotionally pulled into the paragraphs, even if they may relate to you. Try to be as logical, as precise, as on the point in terms of what is given only. All right. Common mistake, reading questions blindly first. Don't ever do that. Read the passage. Choosing options that sounds good. Like a lot of people do this. They have. Some people are actually quite intuitively good at it, but usually, even to them, I don't recommend doing this. It sounds good, is not a good advice. You should have a good reason why you're picking an option and also a good reason why the others are eliminated. So both have to happen. Using outside knowledge is a very common reason why a lot of questions, people get a lot of questions wrong. Overthinking simple questions can also happen sometimes. It's very easy and it's probably very straightforward, but you have like this thing, oh, that probably is not the case. And you may do that. Spending too much time on one passage. Investment, sunk cost fallacy. You spend so much time reading it, now you want to answer the questions. Please avoid that. It's a test. The question paper is designed to test a lot of things. This is also one of this. When can you let go, right? You need to know when to do that. And the final strategy for the exam. The boards really focus on your accuracy versus more about accuracy in terms of can I check it right? Can I read it fast, check it right, and move on to the next part? IPMAT is really speed plus accuracy. It's a bit of both, and you need to balance both angles. Factual versus argument based. Right? One of the things that you need to strategize in terms of your strategy, scan the paper. Look for the easiest RC that you feel is easiest, comfortable to read. Perhaps check out, you can maybe brush through the questions also for like maybe 30 seconds. Check out the question and what looks very comfortable, easy to read. Choose the order in which you're going to attempt. Don't just go for the first one that you see. All right. Obviously, stay calm under time pressure. I'm sure you're going to do that. And reading is about keeping discipline in terms of logic, right? It's not really the test of language. Language is a part of it. There is some element to it, but it really is understanding of your logic more than anything else. Right. So even if you have trouble with language, don't really be bogged down. It really is language. It's a logic test. Build up on that, and all the best. Thank you.